All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Theater 6 and the last day of AFCEA, where we're having an in-depth discussion of DISA's E-ICAM services and the process for onboarding to their solution. My name is Casey Smart. I'm a program manager for Mantech, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce today's moderator and speaker, John Basie. Mr. Basie is the current program manager for DISA's E-ICAM program. He brings years of military experience and program manager experience, as well as a strong technical understanding to DISA's ICAM program. Please welcome me in introducing Mr. John Basie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Who here has no idea what ICAM stands for? That's fantastic. It's really good because over the last couple of years, we've been briefing at AFCEA, we've been participating in Gartner and other events across the DoD to get everyone educated. What is ICAM? What is Identity, Credential, and Access Management? And that's fantastic. You know what it is. What we're trying to push now is acceleration of onboarding. The ICAM services, there's 7 ICAMs within the department. They're the foundation for the zero trust efforts across the DoD. A lot of the tools, technologies, everything comes back down to authentication and access control across the DoD. So by 2026, every application, whether it's financial management or regular app or even like systems and access, all have to be onboarded in one of the 7 DoD the DoD ICAMs. The DISA solution, in conjunction with DMDC and NSA, is the Department of Defense's main well-connected ICAM solution providers. We also are building out and have built out the Federation Hub that interconnects all 7 ICAMs to make it interoperably for passing authentication of user identities and in the future enforcing separation of duties across the environment. So as we go through this, we're focusing on trying to get you, either you're supporting the military today, you're supporting the department today, you're thinking about it, you're trying to modernize other entities, applications, and technologies, and you're being told over and over and over again, ICAM, ICAM, ICAM. You're not going to go out and buy another ICAM, you're not going to go out and build an ICAM. But what you are going to do is you're going to have to adapt your tools, your technology, your application to be able to meet standardized authentication, standardized access control process and procedures. There we go. We got to push it harder. My bad. So if you're familiar with Zero Trust, you've probably seen this diagram before. Every place you see the user, the green, there is some portion of that is dependent on an ICAM service provider. So as you go through your Zero Trust journey of figuring out which of the puzzle pieces make your environment secure with this effort across the department, these are the ones that are impacted by the ICAM. This is why ICAM is so important as a foundation for the DoD. So let's get into what it means to onboard. There are 2 main pillars within any ICAM service. There is the authentication pillar, and then there's the authorization pillar. We'll get into authorization in a minute. Most entities across the department and the commercial space is very familiar with identity. Managing, can somebody authenticate? Do you have the right last name? Do you have the right email address, phone, address, what department they work for? What area are they supporting? That is the authentication area. For onboarding our solution, and again, earlier I said there are 7 authorized ICAMs within the department. They each have their own onboarding process and procedures. I'm only going to talk about this or the DoD Enterprise ICAM today. Modernization. This is really step number 1 across all the ICAMs. How many of you get into conversations where like, oh, you got to be backwards compatible to COBOL, got to be backwards compatible to mainframe, Citrix. We've had those challenges in the department of modernizing applications, modernizing technology for decades. And a lot of times entities will get the money to do that, and then for some reason that modernization dollars goes over here to this other emergency, because they're here to the emergency. The ICAMs across the department, we're pretty much told, you're not to be backwards compatible. The intention is that everybody else in the department has to rise and modernize and come up to modern standards-based authentication, modern standards-based interactive for access management. It's to drive the DoD to be better and be more secure. And we can't do that if we're still worried about a lot of legacy technology that really should have gone away a long time ago. So ICAM is also a forcing function across the department to put the dollars where it matters to be able to be more secure for the future. Okay, within DISA, what we recognize very quickly, we support a lot of the financial community. They have very strict legal requirements. If they can't provide a certain control, they've got to have an agreement that actually says somebody else is doing it for them. Some of you may be familiar with SOC reports, where your system gets evaluated to meet certain controls, and then it actually tells what you're really doing and what some other entity has to figure out on their end with their business processes. ICAM's going through that audit now to have that proof. But in addition, you're also familiar with like SLAs. The memorandum of agreement for the DoD E-ICAM is such an agreement, not an understanding. It has to codify exactly what DISA is doing for that application owner and what we expect for that application owner to do. It's very specific of the operational management, what we're providing, what you can expect, and what we expect of the individual PMOs or the government or the contractor staff, what they have to provide. It's very key that we have an SES or general officer or a very specific appointed delegate that signs that. This is a binding expectation. We have Dr. Herman as our PEO, our SES that signs it, that countersigns it. Once that entity signs it for their agency or their command, that is covered for every program and application from that point down. You do not need to do a separate agreement per network service, per individual application. It is a command level down. The expectation here is if it's an SES or general officer, then they have the authority to speak for that entity, and we don't have to worry about everybody else adhering because they're responsible for that. In the past, programs would have program-to-program agreements that become very taxing on us. It's very taxing on the entities that you serve, having somebody sign off on something where maybe they don't fully understand what they're agreeing to. It's better that we just get it top down. It's one and done. Once that agreement's in place, you're covered for all services of ICAM across the board for the DoD ICAM. Step number 2 is an onboarding request. We have a self-service portal. That is that website. We have it in the slides as the actual link. There is a website that your entities can get to go through and actually say which of our services you want. Which of the services are you prepared to onboard at the moment? Whether it's the authentication only, because you're not quite ready to do a REST API call to set granular access permissions, or it's you're able to do the SAR workflow, but you're not quite ready to do modern auth. You can take that as 2 different paths. All other services that used to be associated with DISA in the identity field, if you've heard of IDMI, MIMSyncs, other kind of synchronizations, we've made that an a la carte after you onboard. Meaning, if you just want a bunch of data about user information, you have to be onboarded to our ICAM to get that from DISA. Otherwise, DMDC actually sells it for that interconnections as a DWICF rate for the government entities. Step number 4 is a base registration. So, with the identity provider component, yes, everybody knows what the CAC user base looks like. It's surprising to find out that a lot of people don't know that corporations that work with the DoD or other entities that work with the DoD can work with the NSA and DMDC, and you can register your own ECA PIVs, your corporate model. So you don't have to have a CAC to access DoD systems, but you have to have a PKI construct, and it's got to be registered with the NSA and DMDC. And at that point in time, we are synchronizing your user identities into our IDP and then providing that as an option to the DoD. Now, as I said, it is a la carte. It's not set by default. Not all applications and services really want that broad spectrum of user base within their boundary. So after they have onboarded as core, they can come back or as part of that onboarding, say, hey, I want to support, I've got a user base stakeholder group of ECA PIV. I need that user base, and we can flip the switch and it turns on for them. The other types of select the protocols. As I said, we use Modern Auth, OIDC, SAML, ADFS, SSO, those constructs. Why do I say modernized and standardized? How many of you, and if you don't really want to say it, that's fine, how many of your entire systems is based on username and password still? Oh, that is fantastic. Everybody's modernized. So I'm gonna actually lead into a sidebar here. I got a colleague here, Chuck, if you raise your hand real quick. How many of you support REST API calls also? Fantastic. So everybody that can support Modern Auth and or can support Rust, this gentleman right here is going to take your business card after my speech here today. We are trying to build a catalog of everybody that can do this already. So when we're working with DoD partners and they're claiming they can't onboard because your stuff doesn't support it, we want to reach out and let you know so we can link you up and say, hey, let's clear the proverbial bowl and get you connected to where maybe somebody just doesn't know that you offer that module, or somebody doesn't know that had they installed this patch 6 months ago, they'd be good to go. Once we get through all the kind of choosing your own adventure here, we go into what's called in-flight or pre-flight or discovery. Every mission partner application that submits to onboard us spends 30 days in a discovery phase. Our team works directly with that government and your contractor teams on that program to go through and fill out a bunch of pre-checklists. Now, these aren't baloney, like, generic, just data that DISA wants to collect for no reason and it goes in a folder and nobody sees it. We are attempting to automate and streamline everything about onboarding and turning on the E-ICAM services, and we're doing that by standardizing the information that comes in. So that checklist that you go through, every bit of the data is what ends up in either as your IDP connection or your AAP MER construct on the other side of E-ICAM. So those checklists, the team goes through. You get dedicated customer success manager that works with that group on at least a weekly. I require the team to schedule a minimum of 1 15-minute meeting with your government, with your program, with your center per week of that 30-day period. You can have up to 3 days for an hour each if you like, but if you don't need that, have all your information, you're at least gonna have a 15-minute checkpoint until you're done. If you're done early, if it only takes 1 15-minute, that's fantastic. You don't have to spend 30 days in a discovery phase. As soon as you've got all of your checklists, all your information gathered and ready to go, we pause you there, we start scheduling your actual onboarding slot. Now, the IDP, the authentication, and the authorization pieces have two different kind of timelines of how fast you can go. We only have a cap of how slow you can go. If they schedule that slot and you're done with your IDP in a day, you're onboarded in a day. If you're scheduled the access control piece and it only takes you 4 weeks, you're done in 4 weeks. Our MOA calls out, and some of our mission partners like to criticize this, and they're not understanding or looking at the not longer than 10 weeks. 10 weeks is the max. A reasonable program, a reasonable system, a reasonable stakeholder group, it should only take a maximum of 10 weeks to get through everything that's required to onboard an E-ICAM. We've only had a couple instances folks go beyond that. A lot of that comes back to step number 1, modernization. They submit the onboarding, they think they've got everything, but when we get to actual execution, they haven't updated their code, they haven't bought the modernization module, they haven't done their due diligence. If they reach that 10-week cap, we do an evaluation of how much they actually prepared prior to getting in the chute, and then we may have to kick them back and send them back to the beginning. We have a lot to do in the DoD by 2026. We can't spend indefinite cycles working with entities that are not willing to help themselves. So we do our best to do everything for everybody. As much as standardized, we publish everything, and we'll get to that information here in a little bit. But the bottom line is we make it possible that every application owner in the DoD can self-serve all the way up to the point where they're ready to come on board, and then it's a couple of forms to fill out, and it just goes really quick. The team is already working on a way to actually even self-serve automate the entire onboarding of authentication and authorization. So we go through that period. You've done your checklist. There's a check bar. There's a check gate to make sure the engineers got everything they want or they need. Go into execution phase. Throughout execution, it's roughly about 3 sprints to get folks actually into, the IDP portion, I'm getting ahead of myself. The authentication piece, they can probably get things done in a matter of days or weeks on the schedule. Sometimes it takes longer. The unknown unknowns, there's a firewall somewhere, there's a break and inspect somewhere, there's something in your environment that you're not aware of that could delay the authentication portion of it. But once you get done with the actual in-flight, there's a 1-week user acceptance testing. Now, I know a lot of efforts within the department will do testing as open-ended. Hey, test the product, and it's freeform. Just have fun. Unfortunately, we can't tie up our testers, our engineers like that. So the testing is very specific of what we already know the system works. You're not testing our system. You're testing to make sure what you understood as your responsibilities as different activities is functioning on your side. That's that 1-week test. Once we go live, you transition from being in an onboarding, almost white glove experience to now you're in operations realm. The operations realm is, again, we go back to the MOA, we stipulate what DISA is going to provide to you. We're going to provide a ticketing, a support structure that is transparent. We're going to provide you the means of submitting your issues. We're going to provide you the means and the phone numbers to call when you got a critical mission and you need to escalate it. And I'll tell you, it's not the PM. So we're going to provide you those escalation chains. You got an idea, you see something in our system that you'd like to see better, there is a inject on the DISA's ITSM portal to be able to submit that enhancement request. We welcome anybody that wants to provide us that recommendation. Some might call it a change request. I like to consider it an enhancement request. We are an appropriated service. I can't just charge you more because you want something better or cooler. So we have to manage our resources. We take in all of those enhancement requests. We rack and stack what follows the core mission of the E-ICAM, and we'll work those as priority number 1. Things that are not necessarily core mission of the DoD, but it does save money or it saves time for the DoD, we set those as priority number 2. And then those things that are, hey, it would be really cool to do this, I don't want to lose sight of that. I still want those good ideas. I love the good idea fairy bucket, but limited resources, limited time. We put them in the backlog, and we get around Christmas and everything's dead, maybe we'll pull something out of there and work on it the best we can. So, talked a lot more about my future slides on that one slide, because it is kind of the basis of all the onboarding process. But, as I said earlier, a lot of folks consider E-ICAM and they stop at identity. How many of you have a workflow or a deliberate process that assigns the access to that identity? Couple. Yeah, we lose sight of this a lot. The identity is the sexy part of a lot of things in ICAMs. This is, now, how many recognize what this workflow looks like? Other than those that I work with on a daily basis and have to listen to me all the time. Back in the back. Well, I mean, yes. DD2875, how many of you love the DD2875? You love it? I'm gonna gold plate one and send it to your house later. The ICAM's intent for the authorization, the access control piece, is to eliminate that form. How many of you tried to go through an audit somewhere and you got this giant stack of paper on your desk and it's like, pull out 5, grab 5. Are they still have access to the system? Oh shucks, this one said 1987. Ooh. No, I have never met anyone in the department that loves that form. He's just a heckler. Nobody loves that form. Well, would it surprise you to know there is 0 DoD policy that requires that form? None. All the other ICAMs, service providers and me, Army, Navy, Air Force, ourselves, we can all trace it. Our entire careers, we've traced that form up to some Army, Navy, Air Force, or an independent agency regulation or an agency policy. But there has never been a DoD policy that says you must use the 2875 as your proof of access control. Now, if you reference the DISA STIGs, they'll say proof of this control could be the 2875 or other. But there is no requirement of that form. However, you go through an RMF audit, you go through an ICAFR audit, you go through an IG inspection, they're going to say, hey, prove that you're doing access control, show me the 2875, because that's the only thing they've ever had. CIO is in the process of issuing a policy letter. It's going out for one more round, where it says that form is not necessary if you're onboarded in ICAM. This is the standard process, give or take, that you have to follow, but you're no longer required to run around with a PDF. You're no longer required to email something to somebody to have 15 versions of who signed in what order. It automates that workflow for you, and then that policy letter is also going to stipulate that because some of this information is coming from the authoritative source or service, it doesn't need a human gate. We're going to be able to expedite what it takes from somebody coming into work to getting all the accesses they need as fast as we can do it, with still some deliberate controls of not granting wide open or not failing open for individual user MP access controls. One other thing that policy will update, so this is the standard access control deliberate workflow process. The process itself is necessary. We can't just do it away with it and just have somebody call the help desk, demand an access, and somebody hand jams it into Active Directory. That's very risky. That's why nobody does that. There's always somebody to approve. There's always some step. But as I said, we're going to automate in a lot of this information so that the user themselves doesn't have to go hunt down their identity information. We've got them all. Supervisor is going to get replaced with sponsor. How about that? You're at a mission, you're forward deployed. You don't have to go run around so many supervisors back in San Diego. Whoever is sponsoring that mission on the ground can say, yes, I vouch this person needs this access. Security manager gate, we're working with the DMDC to actually pull in that eligibility. So it's just an automatic rule. There doesn't need to be a human there signing off that you have the right eligibility for the access of that system. The information application owner, they get to determine what are those rules. Maybe they want to have a deliberate gate, maybe they don't. And then the ISSM, because this stuff is all being automated, there really isn't a necessary for a QA, QC at the end of it all. And a lot of those checks become automated, and we remove the human on that part as well. Okay, so this process is almost identical to what you saw earlier in the authentication onboarding steps. The only differences that are here is there is an added step if you're a financial management supporting system. I actually slipped my mind just as it's getting over here. OUSD, Comptroller, the financial community have this massive guidebook that says these are business functions. And if you're doing this business function here, you can't be doing this other business function. It's a conflict of interest. Just like in RMF, if you have somebody who is the information assurance or an ISSM, a particular cyber role, we don't actually want that person to be configuring domain controllers, separation of duties. Within our tools, we have the ability to set codes to say, if this, then not that. As a financial management system or similar that's coming on board, they have to designate. And OUSD Comptroller actually has the outline of exactly what the functional IDs are, but you have to designate what your role does as a business function if it's financially related. That enables us to enforce inside the application that separation duties between two applications that are on the same ICAM. And as Federation, we get everybody else, all the other ICAMs on the Federation hub. That'll enable us to enforce separation duties across the department. Pretty much everything else is exactly the same on the slide. This is where the 10 weeks come in. That 10 weeks max comes into play. Again, if the mission partner isn't honest, isn't 100% accurate of what they're filling in on their checklist, they haven't done their financial management mapping, they're having trouble doing that. We actually have some dummy variables we put in the system so it doesn't break them, but they have to come back and do that ICAFR functional ID mapping at a later date. One of the other challenges is the REST API calls, and that's why I really need to know who all can support REST out here. Our tools use that to make it available so that you can either have your own custom API that calls in our system and says, what's John allowed to do? Pull that information and set that permission, set that controls in your app. Not everybody is there. A lot of people fell really far behind. And they run into this challenge where, okay, they're ready to onboard ICAM where they think they are, but their system can't do the REST calls to make auto provisioning and deprovisioning decisions. We have a gap solution in place. There's actually a manual tool that our team built that allows them, that manual tool acts and does that REST call for them. And then they can download an Excel file, fill in their information, upload the user, and back and forth. And they can swivel seat it. That's not the ideal. It's not what we want. We want them to tie into the REST and use the API calls. But we get into the onboarding process and programs or services discover things that were unknown unknowns, and that's hindering that API. They can still complete the onboarding at 10 weeks and then come back to us later, the a la carte process, for that API interconnection. It's not a hindrance to onboarding. It's just a delay of one extra feature capability of the tools. Okay, resources for all onboarding. You hear us all talking about automation. We want to do self-service. We publish in transparency. And then the question becomes, well, I'm still having trouble. I need a little bit more. Hey, can we schedule a one-on-one call with you? If your government employees, your government sponsors come to us with that, there's a lot of times that we're going to redirect it. We are operating a very, very small and very agile group, and we got a massive market to try to onboard ICAM. We just can't sit and have individual guided meetings with everybody. So we do ourselves to group everything together and make it as transparent as possible. There are human interactions with the team, but it's not a phone call, it's not a one-on-one siloed email, it's not a meeting with a couple of dozen people. First and foremost, up front, we have a SharePoint site within DoD 365 Joint. So within the DoD, if you're on any of the IL4, IL5 365s, you can get access to that. It is open to all the different 365s. As long as you're registered as a guest on Joint, you can access our site. everything that is not contractual proprietary, fiduciary, obviously it's not on here because if it's classified, it's on SIPR, but everything that we can publish to anybody in the DoD, we put up there. As a matter of fact, I go there. If I think I get a question somewhere in my regular job, I'm like, I'm not sure. I use my own hub as my reference of all the information that I want to put out to anybody else or briefs I'm building. Once a month, we hold a customer forum. It's open to all DoD. It's a Teams meeting, so we share out the link from that hub site. Anybody can come. They can ask questions about the onboarding. The team goes through a demonstration of the onboarding portal and what things look like once you are in E-ICAM. It's open to all questions regarding to onboarding, where do they find information, can you explain this, I don't understand this term. They try to steer clear specific engineering and technical discussions, ports, protocols, and the like. Once you have the general understanding of the E-ICAM that you can fill out your checklist, you can fill in and submit an onboarding request twice a month, there is an engineering deep dive. It's by invite only. So as you submit your onboarding request, there's some ports in there where you're going to say, I got to submit your roles as a PM, as your chief engineer, as your technical advisor, your technical SMEs, even your contractors. That's the list that we pull, and we send a specific invite to those groups. They get to have a deep dive with the engineers, no PMs in the room, no program analysts, no marketers. It is strictly a space for the engineers just to go in deep without anybody having an emotional trigger, a significant emotional event of, oh my God, you're calling us a bad name. I don't care. Go in there. If you want to pick it apart, but it's the engineers and the SMEs getting down in the nitty-gritty weeds with you for those that have actually submitted the onboarding request. We started a new outreach. We're calling it the DoD E-ICAM one-on-one. We understand not everybody can make like once a month customer forum. We moved that customer forum from Fridays to Thursdays to be less conflicting with people's compressed work. But now it's on Thursday, and there's only like 10,000 meetings an hour on Thursday at 4 o'clock. So we now have a DoD E-ICAM one-on-one orientation where the mission partner can reach out to us and say, hey, we're going to hold a town hall. We're going to do an all hands. Can you send somebody for 20 minutes to just introduction to E-ICAM, tell us where we find the information, tell us where we get started. We know about this E-ICAM, it's 4 letters, it starts with an I and ends with M, and that's it. Where do we start? That's what that one-on-one orientation does. Now, we, again, limited resources, small team, very agile, trying to get out there to everybody equally to get the information out. Your agency or entity right now can request one of those every 6 months. We'd like to do more. The same team that is doing that outreach is also onboarding folks, and the priority is the actual ones that have committed to onboarding, but we're still getting out there to try to get that introduction. As I said, during the onboarding process, you get meetings with the mission partner, you get a customer success manager that is going to walk you through and help you through the checklist and then usher you into the execution phase. You're also going to have that twice a month engineering deep dive. That's by invite. And we say coming soon, this is actually running right now. We put together a call-in. We call it the DoD E-ICAM Butterball Hotline. So there's a Teams meeting, whether you're on Teams in the aisle 4, aisle 5, or you're coming from outside. There's a phone number that you can dial, and you'll probably have to get this from somebody else. Well, I don't think I've got the phone number with me. One of the team can provide it for the government folks to come in, and again, they're going to help usher the individual that calls in to where they can find the information, where they can get started. It's not a technical exchange. Again, that phone number there's no way for us to identify if somebody's calling from outside the DoD or not. So it's really ushering folks to where they can find the information on the DoD accessible sites and the Q&A, the question forum, community forum for the agency. So if you are actual a CAC holder now or on a DoD 365 L4 I5, that website at the address at the bottom, please take a photo. If you're actually, it should be on the slides that are part of the AFCEA app. Please extend that to all your government staff to be able to come in and find the information. Okay, resources for all. You don't have to be on IL4, IL5 to ask a question, 365 to ask a question. Our own strategic partner integration office has part of our tools. I'm hesitating because I know what it's called, and I think you all could recognize what that brand is, but I'm not allowed to say it up here. So we have a tool, it's a community forum. It is not an FAQ board. It is not, we parse anything out and then only show you what we want you to see. This is like Reddit or Yelp for DISA. You can come here, you can ask a question. There's a bunch of different forums and categories you can select. You ask a question, anyone in DISA can go in and answer it. There's actually a leaderboard that points DISA folks for, how well are their answers happening? Who's accepting it? Who's thumbs upping? Who's actually saying that did actually answer my question? And it elevates that response to the top of the queue, just like Reddit. And then the person that answered it gets little points. There is a leaderboard on the back end. There's only so many of us that are really competitive that are actually trying to get higher on that board. If you ask a question here and it comes into the E-ICAM queues, it's auto filters, there's a bunch of rules on the back end that gets it to us. My customer engagement team I mandate them, they have to provide a response within 14 calendar days. Not business days, calendar days. If it's a long weekend, they got to work faster during the work days to get that answer up. The warfighters we support don't always get Saturdays and Sundays off. They don't only get the 4-day. So I need them to respond as fast as we can with the resources we have. 14 calendar days is about reasonable, about balancing out them hunting down the answer. Let's say we post an answer, but it's not quite right. You can go back and hit reply. And it can be a conversation there. And they say, well, I can do that in an email, I can do that in chat. The value add, the question you have is not as unique as you think it is. This board is open to everybody in the DoD. So if we answer your question, that knowledge is available for everybody in the DoD. Incidentally, as you start to type your question, the system will automatically look across everything that's been answered, and it will try to match the keywords in your question and raises it to the top and says, are you sure? Does this answer it? And if it doesn't, you just create a new question. We encourage it, very much so. For the leaders within the DoD, we provide our metrics and as full transparency as we can. So the team keeps track of everything that everybody is requesting things to be on board, whether it's on IL4, IL5, or IL6. We keep track of what agency, what they're asking for. There's a lot of data in the back end, but then we don't overload leaders with a ton of just data overload. We provide Power BI, or we use tools for metrics to be able to push that out so the agency leaders themselves can validate whether their agency is actually moving. It's not an information gate where you're going to come ask for me for what the metric is for your agency to validate whether your own staff is telling or reporting the right accurate. This is up here not just for their mission partners, but our leaders and everybody else in the DoD. If I'm going to report a metric, I want to make sure it is the same factual metric for everybody in the department. Similarly, the DoD CIO issued this year a memorandum in conjunction with OUSD Comptroller saying, what does it mean to be compliant in E-ICAM? There's 5 key components: identity provider, the authentication, automated account provisioning, that's that API with the REST calls back and forth, and auto provisioning, deprovisioning. And I can't see it here. The master user record, which is the database if somebody deliberately said this person should have that access. Recert. Every 90 days, your supervisor or sponsor is supposed to recertify that you're still there and working. that you still need that access. All the accesses in the workflows actually end up with like a 1-year expiration, but they're as a deliberate checking to make sure somebody didn't lose their job, somebody didn't quit, somebody didn't have some tragedy happen, and they're not there. That's required just to maintain deliberate accountability of who's on the system and not, and we're not leaving accounts indefinitely in the system only to find them during the audit that somebody was supposed to be removed a long time ago. And then the last one is separation duties. Very important for the financial management folks. Now, RMF will talk about separation of duties, but to the best of my knowledge, there's not a deliberate, this particular role cannot coexist with another. It's kind of a vague implied statement at this point, but as we build the tools to make it more agile, more efficient to enforce, there's a better chance that gets more defined. Okay, where do you start? If nothing else, take away this website and please distribute it to your TAC holders, your DoD government, contractors, military, anybody that you're supporting that already has some access to IL4, IL5, 365. This has every bit of information that we can release that I would ever respond in an email or a chat message goes up there. The search bar on our hub site is restricted to our site. If you type something into the search, it's not going to search all of DISA. It's only going to go to the E-ICAM resources. It's going to pull up whatever the web page is, the graphics, the files. We have, gosh, I don't even know how many hours of video, but it's not one long movie. We've broken every customer forum up into indexed pieces where somebody was at a customer forum, they asked a question, they had a conversation. You don't have to go watch a year's worth of customer forums. You can actually, it's all indexed. And we outline exactly what that topic is for anybody to consume. And with that, now the main event, did I leave any time for questions? Because I know I am long-winded. Oh, fantastic. By all means, even the hecklers of DISA, the heckler. No questions? I will.
I guess I do have one question. So what is the cost to the customer?
It is, the DoD E-ICAM is appropriated.
Okay.
So there is no DWICA freight. There is no cost for the application to come on board us.
Okay.
I can say that for us. For Army, Navy, Air Force, DHA, DLA, and SOCOM, if you're within those command ICAMs, they get to decide that. Okay. I don't know how they're handling the recouping costs within their organizations. But DoD E-ICAM is the appropriated across the board. Thank you. So for the clarity, for those that didn't hear, that was the cost to your organization or your mission is whatever you have to do to modernize your tech to make it compatible with industry standards, the NIST standards to leverage the ICAM capability. But as far as onboarding, licensing, DWICA rates, there is none of that for actually using the DoD E-ICAM.
So if I'm a application owner in any parts of DoD, that's all.
Could you move closer to the mic?
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Is there a policy? What is driving a application owner to come and to do the onboarding?
There is a couple of value adds, and then there's a couple carrots and there's a couple sticks. So DoD-wide has to meet a financial audit requirement to pass a clean audit. So that's one stick. So there's a directive that they're using ICAMs to facilitate and cover down on some gaps within their controls across the financial management, and ICAM is part of that purpose. There's a zero trust requirement. We're trying to meet a zero trust goal by 2027. Everybody needs to get on an ICAM to even leverage half of the tools that are necessary for that zero trust environment. So that's a big, I'm delaying basically most of the zero trust efforts because they got to get an ICAM first. I say I'm delaying. We're here, we're fully operational IL4, 5, and IL6. So all we do is need those entities to come to us. Now, what's the carrots? Just talked about everybody hates the DD2875. If you've onboarded an ICAM, you don't have to do that anymore. What's the benefit? You don't like the delay it takes for a new employee to get an account, to get in a computer, and then you do one access and you go like 3 weeks, you're like, oh shoot, somebody needs this other access over here. Having these centralized automated systems with that master user record means that over time, we can start packaging up the permissions and roles across the environment, across all applications that are onboarded in ICAM, and say, okay, when a new person comes into public affairs, they need this, 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 and this, and that's just automatically ready to go. It just needs to go through the workflows of who's approving, or maybe some things just become a birthright. You're a new employee, you asked for it, you came on board, your supervisor, your sponsor says, yes, they're a new employee. Here's all the things that are birthright. They just automatically apply, assuming you meet the clearance and the JKO, the IA training, et cetera.
So if I'm a legacy application who has an ACL, not any of the modern OAuth or REST or any of those things, and I'm not motivated to come down over here, yes, I hear the mandates. You know where I'm going, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge which some of those legacy applications, Zero Trust is great. Now you really want the modernized ICAM features, devices, all pillars up to the data level. So authentication might be easy, but authorization to the device level and the rest of the pillars of the Zero Trust, where the whole complexity really comes in. You know, is there a way you can help those applications to really drive them to really the forward from that perspective?
Pretty much holding the line is the biggest one.
Okay.
We do get a lot of things asking us to, well, you know, I'm trying not to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm on this legacy application and it doesn't do it. It only does on-off access and that's it. We aren't supposed to change to be backwards compatible because we start doing that, it's a slippery slope. Then we just keep going back, and then the future security monitoring, the security tools can't be even used because the rest of industry has moved off. Now we got a 20-year technical debt gap instead of a couple of years. So the reality is a number of entities are hosted within DISA service providers. Maybe you're in a cloud service provider. Maybe you're in some other data center commercial service provider, and they're saying, we can't do it. This is time to go back to that contract and say, okay, well, we got to look somewhere else in the future strategically. Maybe they start coming around.
Yeah.
Now, as far as if you can at least deal with the modern authentication and the auto provisioning and deprovisioning of the access control, you could still fully onboard the access control portion, the workflow portion. That doesn't require you to modernize because that's all on my system.
Yep.
The interconnection API, if that system can't use it for the auto, we have a DIU tool that is basically, it's a lack of better, it's a PowerShell desktop client that connects as if it was a modern REST app and pulls down that information, allows the app owner to manually grab what somebody's authorized, turn to their system and do whatever they need to do on the legacy system, pull down when was the last time that person logged in there, and then bring that back up.
Yeah.
So there is a workaround, but we don't backwards make ICAM compatible on purpose.
Right. Thank you.
No problem. Got any more questions? I love questions. Yes, ma'am. Please step up to the microphone, though. You can't heckle me from the street.
Can we bring it to you?
Thank you. You had mentioned the various other ICAM components or component level ICAMs. Could you name them for us and also the relationship that they're going to have in the Federation Hub and talk about that a little bit, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So that's the Department of the Army ICAM, the Department of the Navy ICAM, the Department of the Air Force ICAM, DHA is authorized to do their own ICAM. DLA has a stay to do their own ICAM up to 2030. And then Special Operations Command. Once an ICAM is authorized by DoD CIO, and thank you for bringing this up so I can clear the air. DISA doesn't authorize you to be an ICAM. DoD CIO authorizes. They've got a very rigorous configuration board, watch the SMEs come in. It's not about whether your technology can or can't do it. It's whether you really have a mission that is purely unique or a unique requirement, and no other ICAM can provide that service for you. Once DoD as CIO authorizes you to be the ICAM, the next step is a Federation practice statement. It goes through and says what are the information or identity assurance levels that you have to adhere to, what are the standards you have to adhere to, what do you have to do if there's a cyber breach, what are the different conditions of like, whether it's like an ATO-like condition or policy or business practices that you have to adhere to in order to federate. When they authorize that federation, they've got the federation practice statement, then there is a very interconnected, collaborated, coordinated integration with a lot of the governance. You join as an ICAM to the ICAM IPT, and we work through federating that ICAM service provider with the rest of the department. So right now, DISA has established the DoD Federation, ICAM Federation Hub on Nipper. Army ICAM is onboarded. We are onboarded. We're in the process of the Navy. The Air Force is on deck next. DHA, DLA, and SOCOM will be later in the next fiscal year. The SIPR Federation Hub is projected to be built out in the coming fiscal year. Oh, and that's a really good point also. Why the Federation Hub? You know, the intent was to have one ICAM. The intent is still to have one ICAM on SIPR as well. Well, there's things outside of the DoD that we're going to have to collaborate with. The information that you store on your OneDrive, that's user-generated data. But the ICAM identity and access, that information by itself generally isn't highly classified, highly sensitive. It's just who you are. Well, we're going to have to federate outside the DoD to enable the FBI to collaborate on some of these systems. We're going to have to federate to enable the Five Eyes to collaborate with the rest of the DoD. Coalition of partners, mission specifics. Luckily for us, we don't have to worry so much about all the different classification caveats and markings, because again, I don't store email. I'm not federating OneDrives. I'm federating whether you prove you are who you say you are to somebody else. And with that, maybe we control the record of what that somebody else application allows you to do. But it's not highly sensitive data of itself. So we can reach out and touch maybe Canada's ICAM as a service provider, UK's ICAM. They don't have to have 3, 4, 5 tokens. If anybody's in the Army's walked around with your stack of white cards, you put them in a 52 card deck, or you've got one of those baseball card boxes on your desk and it's got all the white cards for all your different systems. Well, the foreign partners absolutely hate that. They would much rather just keep whatever their current token is. They go log into their UK workstation, they're working on something, and then they got to authenticate to the US-driven COP to be able to see the shared data. They don't want to have an external CAC reader or another RFID reader or another set of credentials. They like to just use the one they use when they go to work. That's the long term of the Federation Hubs, is to make that possible across the department. Am I hitting time? I am past time. I got 9:15. I got 7 more minutes to be heckled. Anybody? All right.
Where can we get more information?
Right there. All right, so now we do recognize there are entities within the department that are on impact level 2. Can't get to that site. Well, you could if your 365 or your service provider in IL2 would change the configuration. You could actually get up to IL5. The few we've encountered, for some reason, refuse to turn that on. It's not my battle to do that, but it is possible. It's not a blanket. If you're in IL2, you can't get to that site. Some can, some can't. If you can't, when you come to this one, which anybody in the DoD can access, You can say, hey, I'm on aisle 2. I can't reach your information hub. How do I get that data? The team built a packet in PDF of all things. And my team knows just how much I hate PDF and Excel as documents and not the tools they were meant to be. They built a packet that will send to that entity in an email of all things, or DoD Safe It, that says, here's the basics information to get on board the ICAM. It won't have all the explanations, so there will be a bit of a loss there. But it will have how to join the customer forum, that Teams link, the phone number, the information for the Butterball hotline, as well as you always have access to this. I highly encourage using the quote-unquote DISA Reddit page to get information on the agency. I myself, when I just get tired of my regular job on a Friday afternoon and I want a break, I'll actually come in here and answer questions for other things that aren't my program that I at least know 80% what the answer is. Understand, this site isn't like the authoritative take it to Congress and testify. But when I was in the military, when I supported the Army as a contractor, one of the biggest complaints was that the service members just don't know where to start. They're not looking for the perfect answer, they're looking for a answer. Even if it ends up being wrong, it sends them down a path to at least have a way to go. So getting our DISA as an agency and to come in, even the contractor teams to come in and answer questions here, helps people along. It's not supposed to be factual testimony.
Good morning. Could I point you back to your second slide with the diagram? I was on this slide. I was with the previous one, kind of your slide number 2. One more with the diagram. All right. I was searching for GFUD on there. What's up with GFUD?
So GFUD is not an official name within the agency. So who doesn't know what GFUD is? Okay. We'll do a little quick, I'll do the short version of the history lesson. During COVID, the ramp up for making 365 compatible services put together presented new challenges to the department that we weren't quite ready to handle. It was on the roadmap 3 years down the road, but the DOS team had to stand up 365 in conjunction with the other MILDEX in quick, fast, and a hurry. And there wasn't a identity provider in place at that very moment that could handle that challenge and to be immediately configurable on the fly. So a team within the department built an IDP with modern auth, bunch of force, a bunch of resource, put it together, and they named it. They named it Global Federated User Domain. Well, in reality, that wasn't it wasn't a registered program. It's not a program service. It was just an immediate emergency capability. But it turned out to be a really good one for what the department needed at the time. So as we were transitioning out of a crisis emergency, trying to make people connected in a purely remote environment, the department is okay, we got this thing. It's a really good start. It does a lot of great things for the department, but it's not really funded. So where does it go? It most aligned with the ICAMs. So DISA got it. That didn't run on its own. There's this thing from DE called Identity Synchronization Services, IDSS. Well, it was dependent on that. There was these other things called the DMDC PDR, where all the identity attributes from HR records get fed into it. Okay, well, it needs that too. It also required Global Directory, which was a registered name, which is why they didn't use that initially, which is basically the PKI, where all the certs get issued from. So all these things come together and make up what is the DISA IDP. That's where all those sub-services live under the DITPR program for ICAM. So it's back there. Every time you see Doggles, that's what a lot of the service members, they don't know what GFUD is, but they know what Sergeant Nick, the dog, is. If you're seeing Doggles, you're actually seeing my IDP. Next question. All right. I will Am I over time at this point in time? Oh, hey, perfect stopping. All right, thank you very much for your time. I will be around for a little bit of questions and answers afterwards. If you give me just a 3-minute break, and then I'll come back and I'll sit over here between these two emergency exits in case somebody asks me a question that I need to run out really quick.